Good morning, guys. Welcome to this Monday, July 6th. Hope you had a great July 4th weekend. There was some spectacular stuff going on. We are ready to get this week started. So far, it doesn't look like we have a whole lot of news going on this week. I was looking at the news calendar, and that's pretty freaking anemic. So, not much going on in terms of news. It's going to be a summer trading week, it seems like. So, today we have nothing at 8:30. At 9:45 and 10 we get news. PMI composite at 9:45. ISM services at 10. So that's about it. Tomorrow we only have international trade and a 3-year auction. Wednesday we get Fed minutes and a 10-year auction. Thursday we have jobless claims, existing home sales. And Friday we have Baker Hughes rig count. That's pretty anemic. So we're going to see a week probably marred by summer type trading. A lot of people probably still out, maybe even starting the vacations and stuff like that. So I would just start this whole trading week flat out range bound, and then watch for maybe get some continuation from the back and forth from last week in that employment situation report. We'll see. There was some pretty good selling going into going into Thursday's trading. They ran it pretty hard to the downside, reversed back up again, and you see this whole trading day. I had this little outage, and I haven't fixed my chart since, but you can see the low of that outage, 74.80 is where they were down to. They were all the way up to 75.95. So that whole range was all about selling off the risk off kind of dynamics going into the long weekend. Very close, kind of halfway up the middle, and since then the overnight going into the half day overnight going into July the third there on the Friday, a little baby session, and we've pretty much been holding that all day, all night here going into today's session. So I'm just starting off range bound. Started with the ES is actually up above this support area, the 75 10 still. So there, as long as I hold that, I think we're in pretty good shape to potentially hold this upper range, maybe even take it higher. But I'm not going to expect a big move to the upside or anything like that. I'm just going to watch this and see if they where they likely to want to go here. If they're going to stay, if they're going to stay range bound, or maybe we'll get some kind of a direction going here. But I'm just going to assume a range bound trading until I see some evidence to the contrary. So basically, I'm going to be watching these lower areas, the 74.95 and the 7500s, for potential move to the downside. I'm going to be watching these upper areas, the 75.80, 75.95 to 7600s, for potential move to the upside. If they start taking out the 75.80s, maybe you have a shot at moving this higher. So that's going to, I'm going to not start keying on the long side, and I'm going to be more leaning in on the long side above the 7600s, and below the 7500, I'm going to start leaning in on the short side again. So it's smack in the middle of that range right now. So we'll see where they're going to go. So initially, starting off range bound, that means you're going to look to sell strength, 75 65s, 80s up to the 95 to 7600s. Look at the buy weakness, 75 50s, 40s, 20s, down to the 75 7505s here for rotations back up. Maybe include the 74.95. It's kind of a little bit of a blurry edge maybe on the downside. But this lower area here, I mean, you see this, that comes out on the F1. I think that's when we start getting a bit more momentum to the downside. May adjust this, that's a little tad like that. So we're back here to, I'm going to say 7500 on the downside. We have an edge up here, 7600 on the way up. And we can put a little marker there if you want, like this, a little marker like that. Let's start taking out that upper edge, maybe start thinking about the long side in a bigger way. So that's how we get started. It's pretty summer week. I'm not expecting a lot of directional moves, probably just back and forth. Range bound kind of a trading day. Now let's see if we get some leftover from the employment situation. It'll show up today. If it's going to be on the way out on the upside or downside, anyone's guess. But they were pretty good, ran it pretty hard down here on that July 2nd, Thursday, after the employment situation. and we kind of had to maybe we'll get some continuation of that because it wasn't quite a lot of follow through. But once they start doing that, I mean, they could very well be they're going to run down here and retest this area, the 7480s, at one point today, and that would be that would feel like a pretty good sell off when if that starts happening. But let's see what happens. We have a couple of levels. I'm going to be looking at above that 7580s. May start thinking about the long side. Below the 7520, may start thinking about the short side, but not unless it start taking out the outer edges. I'm going to really start acting on it in a big way. All right. So that's kind of how we get started. See how this whole day shakes out and what kind of trading we're going to get. Looking at the NASDAQ. Aftermath was running pretty freaking hard, and they're a little bit weak, I have to say, but they're still trading in this range. They were down here against the 430s, and let's adjust these volume edges. Gonna drag this guy down a little bit to this lower edge right there. I think that's going to be a little bit more representative now, and we see a little bit more action going on here. And this guy's going to come up a little bit like so. So here we have the range on the NASDAQ. So below the 280, 270, 280s, may have a problem on the downside. Above that, 30,000 to 70 to 80, we are going to be more inclined to lean on the long side. So this is about 1,000 points of the range. That's how crazy this is. And we are trading a little bit above the midpoint, but close enough to start us off in a range-bound fashion. So July 3rd, as you can see, they ran us pretty freaking hard to the downside. They were down all the way, July 2nd, they were all the way down here to the 500s, way down here before they reversed it. And they were all the way up here at the 270s before it started selling off. I mean, hold this guy together. That's the overnight from that day. So so starting off range bound, I'm going to sell strength, 29,940s, 30,000s, 70s, up to the 120s. We're going to buy weakness against the 29,880, 820, 760s, 710s, down to the 670s for rotations back up again. I would probably look at the area right here at the 620s. If that starts coming out, maybe even start thinking about the short side at that point in a bigger way. Now remember, the lower edge is at 500. We got level. Well, sorry, at 270, 280. The 500s was the low of the second there. So we got after below the 29 620s. We still have a fair amount of range to go if we're going to be in on the have a problem on the short side or really some kind of a directional change. And on the way up, we're gonna have to get really creative on the upside. If they had to get up all the way up here and start taking out that 30,300s before we start getting excited about that. So a lot of range, a lot of volatility potential. But I'm going to start off range bound and watch the overnight range. Look at the sell strength against that 940s, the 30,000s, 30,070s up to the 120s. That's going to be the obvious areas to lean against early on. And look to buy against that 880s, 820s, 760s, 710s, 670s, or 680s, down to that 620s. And those going to be the most obvious areas to lean against on the way down here for buying opportunities. So pretty straightforward action right now. We'll see if we get some directional moves today or not, but I would probably expect more range-bound trading. Maybe an early morning run in one direction. Maybe an attempt to test, run it down and test the lows from the second. That could be very much in the cards. But it's anyone's guess. So we're just going to have to wait and see what the market is trying to do and then kind of trade that. Looking at our bonds. Bond market, 112.24 down to that 112.08. That's your range. They may be a little bit outside on this guy. On the way down here, we have one edge at least, the 112s. On the way up here, the 113th here would be the one. I'm going to put the level there on 113 so you see it. That one There you go. So that's going to be the levels to lean against. So looking for short against 1220 to 324 up to the 113s. Looking to buy against 112, 15, 16, 112.08, 112 evens for rotations back up. All right, so that's kind of what the dynamic is, or the ranges are on the bonds. Don't expect a lot of range on the bond market today. I think that's going to be pretty anemic. Summer trading is usually pretty slow. So that's what those are on the cryptos. Crypto's been moving though. I tried an overnight trade there on this. I tried an overnight trade on the cryptos here, a couple of trades. It didn't go that well, but I mean, this is what this will show you something really weird here. So this was a crypto trade I took. Look at how big I made this trade. This is not a lot of money we're talking about, but I got in on a pullback here. I thought I had a shot at taking this higher. The whole thing looked like it was trading higher at a pretty good clip. Turned out that, okay, that was a retest which didn't work. So I figured, like, okay, maybe we'll make it a little bit bigger. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4 contracts in there. And look at the high, how the low take me right there. It's almost that and then I had another trade here. Look at that, a high tick me on that trade. Almost look at I was down here pretty good, and someone sees that book and runs that back and forth in a really bizarre way. That was what like to the target. Like, yeah, you just ran up and just got my stuff. So how did you know my stuff was sitting there? It's almost uncanny, and I don't usually get that. Yeah, that kind of was weird, you know. Sometimes you get to draft like that, but it's when you make a trade big like that, then it just can't get you anyway. Could have been a coincidence, you know. You never know. But I'm watching that stuff, trying to figure out how that Coinbase book really works, and if there is players which have better access to it than us retail guys. Anyway. So, but they've been backing off pretty good in the overnight. The cryptos have been up and pretty good. They were up on the 63 to 64, 63,000 range. They're down to 62 in the Bitcoin now. Ethereum 1750. They were way down in the 1500. So yes, backing off a bit, but that's pretty sloppy action on it so far. But anyway, so I mean, all that big trading it's not big contracts. I'm down $13 on that, $14 on that. So it's not that big of a deal. It's just, you know, trying to get that figured out, how these ranges really work, or how that book really works, and getting a little bit skeptical about it, but you know, we'll see. We'll just keep at it. Anyway, so we'll leave it there for now. Back to the ES and the Nasdaq, and let's see. Both of them are pretty much where we left them. And trust me, you get high and low ticked on these guys too, but they move so fast and so violently that it's unlikely you get I think it's a lot more volume going down the pipe on these ones for it to those games to be played. But at this point, starting off range bound on the ES and Nasdaq. Let's see how far they can take it, and if it turns into any kind of directional move. But expect some slow-mo kind of a range-bound trading day. That's kind of what I'm expecting now. Then let's see if I get surprised later on or not. Alrighty, guys, we'll wrap it there. So good trading this second week in July, and I will see you guys back at 11:30 later.